the series of famous rabbis of yesteryear. Today we want to speak about Rabbi Yosef Nahmuli, famous rabbi of his time. We're not too sure the date when he actually passed away in his own right, but it's estimated the Haimi website commemorates his passing on the 7th of Adar, because that was the date when Moshe Rabbeinu had passed away. So saying that all the Shemot are connected to Moshe Rabbeinu, that's how they would just come up with that date. But if anyone knows more, please let us know. So he was seemingly passed away approximately in the year 1785. He was not just a rabbi, he was the head of Jewish court of the Jewish community of Laariса of that point in time in Greece. Let's explore a few of the highlights in regards to him. Yes, it was in 1785 he was born in Laarisa. And I think his father's name was Rabbi נחmולי, if I'm not mistaken. And they were descendants of another famous rabbi, Rabbi Aaron HaKohen Varachaya, if I'm not mistaken, another famous rabbi I think that we spoke about before. Machachmei Seloniki he happened to have been. So who was Rabbi Aaron HaKohen over here? He lived between 1627 to 1697 and was very famous in his time. I think he was an author. He would write a lot of works, but would get printed, I think, after he passed away, if I'm not mistaken. And Rabbi Aaron Cohen Perakia, as I say, of its own right, was a pupil of the famous Chassidei Perakia HaKohen, if I'm not mistaken, and was an author of 4 works, apparently, Paret Mate Aaron, which was a responsa, the pre-Kahuna in 1709, which was on Talmudic, let's say, treatise in of its own right. And there would be much more, let's just say, in of its own right. Yeah. And there was also Zichron Debarim, which was printed in Salonika, the year 1747, and in 1787, he had the famous big day kuhuna of Aaron HaKohen did, and that was, we happen to be speaking today about Rabbi Yosef Nahmuli, because it happens to be just marked here as a Hilula, but seemingly we're not too sure when the exact date is. Okay, so he was born in Laarisa, as we said before, to Rabbi נחmuli, descendant of Rabbi Aaron HaKohen Perakia, from the great rabbis he happens to have been from Greece in Saloniki. Vav katavak damat lisifro dekuna shenidfas b'shanat heitav kuf yud gimel. So a preface will be written at that point in time. B'meshech asur lamad b'Saloniki etzel harav Rafael Eliezer Nachmi Ash עד שנאלץ לשוב ללאריסה בשל מצבו הכללי. בלאריסה למד אצל הרב חיים אבו השלישי. So he would actually learn, I believe, when he was coming in and out at that point in time. I think in Laarisa he would learn under the famous Rabbi Abu Lafia of your friends. Let's just say a word with regards to him, because he really was a very, very great rabbi of his time, and we weren't able to speak previously, so he would actually learn over there. Who was Chaim Abu Lafia? Lived, I think he passed away in 1775. He was rabbi in Israel and of the Kehilot of the Ottoman, in its own right, and he actually came from great auspices himself. He was born to Rav David Abu Lafia from Tiberias, and would learn actually in yeshiva. Rav Abu Lafia would, I think, in Tiberias at that point in time, of Rabbi Yitzchak HaKohen Rappaport, who was the author of the Batei Kuhuna, and he wrote various different works. Rabbi Chaim Abu Lafia did, including Shut Chidushim B'Droshim, Perush LaGadash Pesach, and Nishmat Chayim, which was a Shut Shelot and Shuvot of Droshim that was printed, I believe, in Saloniki, I think, near Tafkuf Samach Vav, and his major Perush, let's just say, in its own right, of Rabbi Chaim Abu Lafia was of the Smag. That's something to just point out over here. So what we're speaking about, Rabbi Yosef Nahmuli over here, so he seemed like he was connected with many rabbis. Nisa le'eseh niftera b'dad av in the year Tav Kuf Aleph, I think, if I'm not mistaken, his mother is, that was the name in of its own right. So very interesting. We're just speaking now for a minute about Rabbi Chaim Abu Lafia, famous rabbi, Nisa le'eseh, and Bitot Shel Yitzchak Even Shanji, the Shisifro Borot Chai Maim, Atakma. I think Hey Tafkuf Yutet Nadat Lekfa Kishirai Beshel Magefa Shparza Belarisa. Unfortunately, there's some various different plagues that actually, unfortunately, come about at that point in time. And I think Tafkuf Chafbet, Darash Be'ir, Trapot Litza, the Tovat Shlichut Taberis, in regards to the It was just more smooth, I think, shlichot, just from house to house. Right. So, okay. So, Benav Haya Chaim Nachman Vidal, I believe his name is Shlomo, Shel Ktav HaKtama Lesifro, Shel Avi, B'Liyamin, Harav. Yeah, so it's just stating over what he says over here in of its own right. So, Shel Ktav HaKtama Lesifro, Shel Avi, B'Liyamin, Haya Leshadar, Chatzono, Chaya Shmuel, Yom Tov, V'achiv, Haya Yisachar נחמולי. Interesting enough, now he left great works, Rabbi Yosef Nahmuli, seemingly, especially the Ased HaNechalim, which was on various drashot, which would be opened up into, 4 parts in of itself. Yeah, so I think it was, would give a drasha famously on the various different important Shabbats of the year, like Shabbat Halbashada. Let's just say he was a Shluchei Drabanan, if I'm not mistaken. Rabbi Yosef Nahmuli also, Nachal Adenicha, Nachal Tama. Bo Gam Hesped Rabbi Yehuda Navon. So seemingly maybe he was connected to the famous Rabbi Yehuda Navon. Now, who was Rabbi Yehuda Navon here? Let's explore something. He actually passed away in the year 1844, if I'm not mistaken. I think in Jerusalem. He was buried in Har Zaitim. He was a Shadar, a rabbinic emissary in Jerusalem, and a Rishon LeZion, I think, and had closest with this is the Yeshivat Domestic Elazar, if I'm not mistaken, and various other places. Also, I think he was from he's from Istanbul, if I'm not mistaken. So so Rabbi Yehuda Navon had like a very charut, so important history in its own right, but still, it's definitely a point of reference to find out the various different sports results. Even still, it's very interesting. So, anyway, we are at the moment speaking over here. And within regards to famous Rabbi Yosef Nahmuli, let's add on a few more importances within regards to his life. Anyone that's tuning in live, first of all, welcome to our community as we are exploring Rabbi Yosef Nahmuli of his point in time. So, I think he gave write a shita, devote a chunk of his writings to Bava Metzia of Ketuvot, and a responsible psalm, I think, which was in Saloniki in the year 1795, if I'm not mistaken. But there were many famous rabbis from there, including Shmuel Florentine, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not too sure. I think he was a rabbi, but I'm not too sure. And various other people also we have to point out. It's very interesting. And we're just going to take another short break for a minute as we're exploring the life of a famous Englishman. As a famous man of his time. And his name was Rabbi Yosef Nahmuli, a great rabbi. So someone I've known since he was a kid of his. So we will come back in a minute and continue. Okay, thanks everyone for being patient over here. We're just exploring a few of the highlights with regards to a famous rabbi's life over here. His name was Rabbi Yosef Nahmuli. Very, very interesting enough. He would have great sons, including Chaim Nachman and Vidal Shlomo, who would write, I think, an introduction. And he would have a son-in-law also who was a famous rabbi, if I'm not mistaken. And let's explore more within regards to him. As I said before, he was, I think, close, or he would have correspondence with Rabbi Chaim Abulafia III in Laarissa. He would study with other famous rabbis, I think, of that point in time. There was, unfortunately, I think there were plagues that would, let's say, really cause havoc at that point in time, especially possibly in Greece and various other places. If I'm not mistaken, he would get married to Rabbinit Esther, who passed away on the 4th of Av in Tavkov Aleph. She happened to be the daughter of Rabbi Yitzchak ibn Shangi, if I'm not mistaken, who was also a famous rabbi. If I'm not mistaken, there was a book of the Be'erot Hamayim, which I think he would actually author. I think it would be well-traveled. He would go from place to place also. Very, very interesting. And as I said before, his sons was Chaim Nachman and Vidal Shlomo. And they would actually write many of his works, I think, and especially while he was traveling, I think. Chatano Shmuel Yom Tov. Apparently his Chatan was someone named Rav Shmuel Yom Tov. נחmולי. That was his brother, apparently. So let's now look at the books over here once again. The Esed HaNechalim, which is printed in Saloniki, which was consisting of various different drashot, sermons, and I think it was actually divided in as many as 14 chalakim. That's something that we'll have to point out, and will contain various different informations. And I think he was also close to Rabbi Yaakov Shaul, if I'm not mistaken, who was a famous judge, great rabbi in Izmir, author of the Kol Yaakov, respectively. So there was some sort of connection over there. And Gam Hesped, I think he was also maybe connected to Yehuda Navon, who was an educator. Rabbi Yehuda Navon was. He was a Shluchei Rabban, head of Jewish court in Jerusalem, and a Rishon LeZion, and Rosh Yeshiva the Masek Eliezer in Istanbul, in Turkey. Very, very prominent position. So, Gam Shnei Roshim Neshabat Al-Basha, V'Dorish Lesped Yaakov Al-Ba'ali. So apparently he would give a hesped also. We should point about this great rabbi, Rabbi Yaakov Al-Ba'ali, who was a rabbi, a Dayan, a Parshan in Izmir, in Turkey of its time. Yeah, so there was another book of his, Ashdod Piska, if I'm not mistaken, printed in Saloniki near Tavkuf Vav. There was Shut Shelot Shuvot, Ta'al Baba Mitzia, Tubet V'od. So on those various different things, specific Shuvot, Marabanim Nosivim, Shedano Imo Valacha, Ki Chayim Moda, Isacha Abulafia Vishmuel, Polomarantin, Besofa Sefer Shneirach, Ali Day Ben Hamechaber. So very interesting. Yeah, so just exploring a bit with regards to this rabbi, because it was so many years ago, and I want to make sure it's as near as accurate to what it was. Yeah. So over here we're speaking about Rabbi Nahmuli here on this special edition. We're going to explore a few of the highlights from his book. I think his book that I said Nachalim will contain 366 pages. I think it was published actually in Saloniki, so that was convenient. So it would save the times, let's just say, within regards to that. So let's continue here once again. Rabbi Yosef Nahmuli. So he was famous for the Esed HaNechalim book and the Esed HaPiska. He was a Talmid of also Rabbi Raphael Eliezer Nachmaish, and Rabbi Chaim Abulafia was his rabbi also, and very, very interesting. So just shows how famous the people were of that specific day and how much they actually achieved, and so on and so forth. So very interesting. Yeah, as I said before, I think it was close to Rabbi Raphael Elazar Nachmiyash also. He passed away on the 17th of Cheshvan, seemingly in the year 1805, and he was also from Saloniki, from the Ottoman Empire, and would learn Torah under the famous rabbis. I think their lives would overlap, if I'm not mistaken, by that window in time. So something that we have to point out over here. Anyone tuning in live, welcome to our community as we're exploring a bit with regards to Yosef Nahmuli, today famous banker, passed away quite Hilulu was quite recently. He was the author, I believe, Yosef Nahmuli, of the Esed HaNechalim, of the Rav Yaakov Shaul, also of Rabbi Yaakov El-Ba'ali, I think, another famous person over here inside the building. So yeah, it's a very, very interesting, sir. But today we happen to be exploring the life and career of a very famous rabbi, and very, very interesting, sir. Yeah. Just be patient for a minute, friends. Yes, Rabbi Raphael Nachmiyash, certainly someone that we've mentioned about before, but I think also the Hayomi website out here does give a biography within regards to him. Once again, just stressing what he said. I think he was also a friend of Rabbi Yitzchak Gatin, who we spoke about before, and he was get married to Rabbi Yitzchak Ibn Jengi's daughter, the author of the Borot HaMayim, which I think this book was printed near Tet Vav in 1755, with a specific Hakdama from Chacham Yosef Nahmuli and various other teachings. So say Chacham Yosef Nahmuli Shemesh Rabbi Laarisa, he become the head rabbi of Laarisa, B'fia Yudim, and Mizrach Yom HaMerkazit, V'amad בראש בית דין, בני הקהילה, היו מורחבים, מצאצאי הרומניוטים, מהתקופה הרמזית, ממגשרי ספרד, או מהגרים מארצות הקבלן, הבלקן, this would say it over. And Rabbi Yosef Nahmuli, I think he passed away in the year 1785, and we're not too sure the exact date when he passed away. It's listed here 7th of Adar, only because just that could be the date when they're usually running back. Turn right, and that's the date when Moshe Rabbeinu happened to pass away. That's what we say, so that's also a sad time in that aspect. And if you turn right, so that's something I'll have to add up over here. And yeah, we're not too sure when he passed away. And he was a great author and leader of that point in time, and the famous rabbi. So we have to point out over here, Rabbi Yosef Nahmuli was over here. And we will attach, Be'ezrat Hashem, the picture of the preface to this book when you're browsing this, respectively. So very, very interesting, and a lot of people will be excited to hear more just in general. So we're exploring the life of Rabbi נחמולי over here. So we have to point out Rabbi Yosef Nahmuli, I believe was a rabbi also in Greece, we have to point out. Yeah. Okay, thanks everyone. We're just speaking here about great rabbi. He was connected to Rabbi Raphael Nachmiyash. Who was he? He was he would learn, I think, at a young age, great amount of Torah, and become very, very successful, let's just say, in of its own self. Right, various Haskamot were provided from Saloniki and from various other places. Also, he was close to Rabbi Aaron Amarillo, if I'm not mistaken, and yeah, there is what to do, that is for sure. Yeah, so very, very interesting thing. Come out 1777, there was more strange things she was requesting, for example. And yeah, very, very interesting, friends. Yeah, so everyone over here, just a few highlights with regards to the famous rabbi over here that we're speaking about. Rabbi, that's something I will have to very much point out over here. Now, friends, we're a community over here. If you're new for the first time here at this channel, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and join over here as we are exploring some of the famous people of different times. We happen to be speaking, I believe, over here today also within regards to this topic. So just how important actually it is another question altogether. Yeah, so just I'm just checking from the Hayomi website if there's any more information. Let's explore a few of the highlights from his book of Rabbi Yosef Nahmuli. one teaching says, "Melamed av shegui shotef b'chanuto asu larviach mat trevot." This is an important teaching over there. Another teaching says, "Melamed shilchu acha haTorah lavi'a lesuka asmucha lekro ba." So that's just another piece of wisdom. Okay, then there's another. It says, "Melamed hacham be'inyan moreshet avot." So this is now a question. Melamed shadiv shliach tzibur talmid chacham elman al shliach tzibur for sure. So he's got to go to that, and they come with a few questions and a few nationalities. That's very, very interesting. So I think on this note, we're going to wish you well, Shavua Tov, and stay tuned for some more great content about great rabbis of yesteryear. That's something I have to point out. And wishing you all well, and thanks for watching. Thank you.